let's start with free agency. People want to know names. What are the names?
Yeah. Top guys to watch include Ravens left tackle Ronnie Stanley, Eagles defensive tackle Milton Williams, 49ers cornerback Charvarius Ward, and Buccaneers wide receiver Chris Godwin. Those are like the top end names that are out there that Patriots are expected to pursue. And there's a lot of names out there that the Patriots are not expected to pursue either, just because they don't view players as a fit, concerns about injuries, expecting to make a little bit more money than the Patriots are willing to pay, because the Patriots are still taking a smart approach to free agency. They're not just throwing money all willy-nilly at every single prospect that shows interest. But those really are probably like the top 4 names that you would toss out there in positions of need for the Patriots, because we've talked about all offseason: wide receiver, left tackle, cornerback, defensive tackle. You'd throw a defensive end in there as well. It's just kind of top loaded at that position with guys that the Patriots just might not pursue at defensive end, but that's certainly a need that the Patriots are realizing as well.
So one name you left out there that I know has been the talk of the town while we've been gone is T. Higgins. And right. I want to say this. There was no one that you and I talked to in the league, agents or otherwise,
right,
that believe Higgins is available. When it's reported the Bengals are likely to apply the franchise tag, they go, yeah, he's off the market. Like, they really want to retain him. And Joe Burrow has applied a ton of pressure. But if Higgins was seen as available, and maybe things change. It's only Sunday, March 2nd. We still have 8 days until the legal tampering period opens, and all of these deals sprout up at 12:01 p.m. Like, look at this. Patriots made quick work with whomever. They would be in on him. There's interest.
Right.
As an agent said to me, everyone in the league knows the Patriots want T. So it's not that the Patriots suddenly looked at T. Higgins and unearthed some nugget in his scouting report that said, oh, we're out. There is a discussion about, do you want to go $30 million for a guy, a receiver, as you kind of build out your team from the trenches first? But there is interest in T. Higgins. Mike Giardi had this first, saying, look, once Higgins was out the market, that's when they stopped pursuing. But it wasn't that they stopped themselves. So we're corroborating what Mike has, and that's all we have on Higgins, who otherwise, again, is just not seen as someone who's
yeah, and like, when a player's franchised, he can still be traded, but Patriots don't really want to trade, let's say, like a second round pick for T. Higgins, and then also have to sign him to a $30 million or $35, whatever it's going to be, $1 million per year deal as well, because then, like, it's fine to throw out the money, but this is a team that needs to build as much as possible through the draft, and that's been something that obviously Elliott Wolf, coming from the Packers, always wanted to do. We'll see how Mike Vrabel, John Stryker, and Ryan Cowden change that process, but you don't want to have to do both for a player like, let's say, T. Higgins. Like, maybe for a higher echelon wide receiver, you might be willing to do that, but it's not really what the Patriots should be doing right now.
Yeah, and when you talk about upper echelon, like T. Higgins very well maybe number one. I've argued his metrics
for sure,
independent of playing opposite Jamar Chase, which is the big question. Could you operate in a vacuum or on your own as a number one, are good enough? But you throw in the hamstring issues and you go, if you're committing that many resources, even as a team that has the most or second most resources when you combine draft capital and cap space, you'd rather have a sure thing. That's like Justin Jefferson type of money.
Right, well, it was A.J. Brown from a few years ago. When the Eagles made that deal, it made complete sense. But T. Higgins right now is not at the level that A.J. Brown was a few years ago.
Yeah, which brings us to DK Metcalf, who has been had a growing place in my heart over the last few weeks, entertaining, kicking around, possible trade, and actually pitched this to a Patriots front office member. I was like, oh, it's a compelling case. But even though the Patriots, as we can report, have kicked the tires on a possible trade for Metcalf, for the reasons you just outlined, seems pretty unlikely. Because, again, it's not only just the resources of whatever it costs to trade for him and then the contract, where a 3-year deal would take him just past his 30th birthday. It's the idea that, okay, once we say we're willing to trade this for this player, we're willing to pay this amount to this player, make him the highest paid player in the team, the moment he steps in the locker room, he has more power than anybody else, more influence. And we've seen this in bad examples before in the last couple of years of guys that you go, everyone's looking up to Matt Judon on a contract year. This doesn't look so good. Devon Godchow gets an extension. Stuff he's saying after games doesn't sound great. Do we want to do this with a player we're not familiar with? And so Vrabel has said, look, they need to be tough. They need to have good play demeanor and play style. They need to be aligned with us to rebuild the culture. It's not to dump on DK Metcalf. It's just to say, when you make that commitment, same as proposing to someone, like, it can't just be that we're a good fit on paper and you're really hot. It's like we are aligned in values and everything else and trust. and that's a big commitment. I'm not sure the Patriots are willing to make with a guy they thoroughly do not know.
Yeah, and I mean, when we kind of brought it up to a team source, was like, yeah, I mean, it's been discussed, just because like everything's been discussed, but it wasn't emphatic like, yes, that's something that we are actively pursuing and want to do. It wasn't that type of situation. So yeah, I'd say it like remains a possibility, but I wouldn't put a whole lot of, I wouldn't get super optimistic about that being the type of thing that the Patriots want to do. And it is like, I had talked about this before the combine, and it only kind of strengthens my opinion on this now. Like, it's certainly possible that the Patriots add a wide receiver, like Chris Godwin would probably be the top available need right now as far as free agency goes. But it wouldn't be surprising if the Patriots came out of free agency in like that pre-draft period without having that like filling needs in a stronger way at other positions, I guess I would say, than at wide receiver.
Right. And I don't know if we've said this before, because again, my brain, there has to be a case of like combine brain. And if so, I have it. And if there wasn't confirmation already in this show that I have a lot of problems, it was the fact that when I went to bed at 9:30 and had my first dream and woke up at 11, it was you and I meeting with an agent that we didn't actually get a hold of at the combine on Friday. So the point is, I don't know if we said this yet, but the Patriots are not optimistic about Chris Godwin leaving. I don't know many people in the league that also think he'll leave Tampa Bay, the only NFL team he's known. You know, he's been there the entire time, obviously, with the front office, different quarterbacks, but the latest quarterback, Baker Mayfield, people really like playing with. So it doesn't make sense for Tampa to let him go. High character guy, though. That's a type of player where you talk about questions of not football characters. It's not an assault on DK Metcalf. No. But there are no questions about what Chris Godwin would bring from that standpoint in the locker room and work ethic, and you can build a champion with. As I've discussed, Tom Brady talked about him, raved about him more than any other teammate. All right, left tackle. Alaric Robinson came off the market while we were at the combine, and we're going, all right, they got three options at left tackle. And it starts with Stanley, followed by Dan Moore, Cam Robinson. People you talked with said, look, we're comfortable with all of them. And this speaks to what Elliott and Mike Vrabel spoke to publicly at the podium Tuesday, Wednesday, saying if plan A doesn't work out, we're going to pivot quickly to plan B. Plan B doesn't work out, we're going to plan C. This is a prime example of that. Yeah,
and that was multiple people that I was basically just like, you guys in on the tackles? Yes. This guy, yes. This guy, yes. And like they know that they need to come out of free agency with a viable left tackle. They can't go into the season again the way they did last year, where, you know, Chukwuma Okorafor, a right tackle, has to move to left tackle, then quits after one game. They can't go into a situation then where Vidarian Lowe is going to be their left tackle, because Vidarian Lowe certainly tried as hard as he possibly could last year, but still proved that he was not going to be a viable starting candidate at that spot. And really, obviously, they do need to, I think they would ideally like to come out with two starting tackles. I think in an ideal situation, based on what we heard, Caden Robinson, who was last year's third-round pick, would be the third guy. And we did hear that the Patriots are high on Ken Wallace, that even new offensive line coach Doug Marrone is optimistic about Ken Wallace's future. But in saying that, it's still telling that, like I said, in an ideal situation, they come out of all of this with two tackles and certainly one guy who can protect Drake May's blind side. And the guys left there are Ronnie Stanley's the top option, but you got Cam Robinson, you got Dan Moore Jr., and beyond that, there's not a lot of options. So this is one area where the Patriots really probably do need to pay up just to ensure that they've got someone that they can trust in that position.
Yeah, and Alaric Jackson outperformed, for whatever they're worth, certain media projections by like $2 or $3 million per year in this extension. So if you're Ronnie Stanley and Patriots fans are going, okay, they need him, he's got a better market, he can ask for more. There's still a viable pitch here where you don't go over the top in terms of, you know, $25-30 million for a left tackle. You go, hey, we're going to give you a 2-year deal. You're 31, or about to turn 31. We'll do it mostly guaranteed, like 2 for 22 per year, 2 for 24 per year. So you don't have to worry about losing money in injuries. And when you do hit the market again, you're still at an age where teams look at you, maybe even better than Morgan Moses, who is another name, and say, you can still cash in a little bit later. What do you think? And that's a guy, too, character-wise, no questions or concerns. It's just injury. But aside from a devastating ankle injury that had follow-up and some issues that wiped out 2 seasons, he's averaged 14 games per year the last 3 seasons. So I don't think those concerns are as big. Sticking with the
And
offensive
I would
line,
also say, just as a brief aside, like coming out of this week, conversations with agents, I think we had a pretty good idea of this beforehand, but like teams know where they stand after this week. I know that
yes.
technically they are not having any conversations about free
No.
agents because that would be illegal. That would be tampering. That would go against NFL rules. But one way or another, they come out of this week having a pretty good sense of whether or not they're going to be within a player's, let's say, like top 3 to 5 teams.
Yes. Yeah. And they also know what players are going to get. The agent's job is to survey the market in addition to historical data points. And we've talked about this before, production, draft status, age, health. Like you can kind of figure out what guys should get. Teams have wildly different views sometimes on what a player is worth. But nonetheless, if you're on a low end of a player talking theoretically to an agent, he might just say, forget about it. You don't have to talk to us if this is the number that you're coming in with. This is the top 3 or 4 or 5. You mentioned Caden Wallace and Layden Robinson, and it was a good note we actually omitted from the article about Doug Marrone being high in Caden Wallace, who's the 3rd-round rookie tackle last year, got hurt, obviously. Their vision as a team seems to be if Wallace is a swing tackle, as you said, and Layden Robinson is a swing guard inside, that's ideal because what that says is you've secured starting caliber players everywhere else, and maybe Cole Strange makes his magical leap. Who knows? But that includes center, which is a position to watch here where I think the Patriots are going to be out on the top level centers in the free agent market. But as much as, look, I was wrong on this, penciling in David Andrews as starting center in 2025, that might not be the case given how they're approaching free agency and what we learned about the draft as well.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like I mean, one way or the other, David Andrews missed the season with a shoulder injury. And like even last year, the talk was kind of like, yeah, hopefully he can be 100% for 2025 because he underwent the surgery. So I do think it's smart to have a plan B. And that's telling you that the Patriots have a better plan than they did last year when at some positions, like when they whipped on plan A, they had to go to like plan H, like it was like it got bad. So that at least tells you that they are saying like, we know we need this position. We can't handle this the way that we did last year. So even like you said, a position that you would think that you'd be set on, like at center, if David Andrews can't play, you need someone in there. And I don't think they're going to be willing to pay someone, like $20 million a year at that position or anything like that. But it really is all along the offensive line that they're looking for players. And Trey Smith was franchised this week by the Chiefs. So he's also off the table. So that's where you have to pivot on these things. Like where you think that all these free agents are going to be available in early February. Now you're talking about possibly like, 3 of the top 20 or whatever free agents now in T. Higgins, Trey Smith, and Larry Jackson are off the board. And we still have 8 days until the start of free agency. So some of these other guys might come off the board as well before them.
You want to talk defense?
Sure. Hell yeah.
So rumor has it, the Patriots covet Jets linebacker Jamien Sherwood, who in any year of the past 24 seasons, you and I would be studying free agency and be like, he's 6'2", 216 pounds to play as linebacker.
Yeah.
Hell no.
Right.
But in Mike Vrabel's new defense, with new defensive coordinator Terrell Williams, who's going to call plays, as we heard on Tuesday from Vrabel, they want smaller, faster guys. What the defense is going to look like in New England moving forward is what it looked like in Tennessee, where guys like David Long played linebacker and were 219 pounds. But what David Long and what Jamien Sherwood do to overcome the fact that they are 216 and 219 pounds respectively is hit like a mother. And that's what Vrabel wants. This is aligned with the vision of guys who are going to have high character. They're going to be violent. They're going to be physical. So the guys they bring in fit the vision that he has already, in addition to the fact that they're trying to add more speed to the front in the defense. And I'll say this too, when we talk about their top free agent targets, it's not just the big names everyone's been discussing for the last month or so. Ronnie Stanley being a prime example, Chris Godwin another. There are mid-level veterans that you and I have heard they're going to come heavy for on day one, perhaps exceeding their markets, but fit this same vision. A little bit lighter, but they're playmakers and they're tough as hell.
What's going on, everyone? Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media with a very exciting announcement. Here at Patriots Press Pass, we will be introducing bonus tiers. Now, this will not affect any of the content that hopefully you've grown to know and love over here at Patriots Press Pass. It's all going to be some brand new stuff and extras so we can connect with you more and also provide you some more in-depth and high-quality content. Hopefully, You guys are going to like it.
Yeah, Jamie Sherwood is a guy that specifically, like, I was told that's the type of players they're looking for at that position. And it is interesting because, like, I think he probably weighs less than Kyle Duggar, maybe even weighs less than Jabril Peppers, but just a different play style. And, like, you want that linebacker mentality, but in kind of a smaller, more compact body type.
Right. Let's get to some names that they are not in on, because I think these would surprise some folks. Josh Sweat, Eagles defensive end. Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, Khalil Mack. Not expected to draw interest from the Patriots. Were any of those a surprise to you?
I think Josh Sweat was someone that a lot of people expected to draw interest from the Patriots. So that's one that people would probably be a little bit upset about, maybe. But yeah, like Khalil Mack's not a big surprise. That's someone that, you know, he's older. He's probably going to be looking to compete for like a Super Bowl, for a championship. For, you know, so that's not necessarily the greatest fit there. Amari Cooper and Stephon Diggs. You know, with Cooper, I think that there's a fear that he's kind of lost a step right now at this point. And with Stephon Diggs, unclear why that would not be the greatest fit. But no, I wouldn't say necessarily like majorly surprised. But if there are any concerns about Josh Sweat at all, then you don't want to have to pay him the amount of money that everyone else is paying.
Okay, two other names that I would file under a maybe are Byron Murphy from the Vikings and DJ Reed from the Jets. Obviously, both corners. They are going to command a bit more money than I think folks expect. But in addition to Charvarius Ward being near the top of the Patriots board, it clearly tells us that the Patriots are trying to remake their vision at corner, where guys like Jonathan Jones, they want back, but at a certain price. I've heard Marcus Jones does not fit what Mike Vrabel wants to do on defense. And so those two might be a matter of price. And then another example where they're going to go plan A to B to C to D. I'm just curious because, like, they obviously are going to command a lot of money, and that'll be a place where I think the Patriots have a limit that if those guys go up and above, they'll quickly move on from.
Yeah, it does sound like Murphy will probably wind up being out of the Patriots price range. That they might go for someone maybe a little bit cheaper. But I mean, if it doesn't come in as high as expected, then certainly a possibility there. DJ Reed has been a great player for the Jets, but like I think that cornerback is such a sneaky need for the Patriots because you got by last year with Marcus Jones and Jonathan Jones, and then you threw in, you know, Alex Austin, Isaiah Bolden, but like you really ideally need a strong number two across from Christian Gonzalez. And it's when you have Christian Gonzalez, when you have someone who can be the best cornerback in the NFL as one of your outside cornerbacks, you don't necessarily want to then like take another guy in the top 4 of the draft or anything like that. So it might be a better solution to fill that through free agency. But I mean, teams value nickel cornerback so much as well right now that's another area where I really would not be surprised if the Patriots spent more than people expected to, because you think of it as being a third cornerback, but like that guy's on the field for about 90% of the time. So like I said, would not be surprised if the Patriots wound up spending hefty money on a nickel or a slot, especially if that player has some versatility to play outside a little bit as well.
And there are a few things we like to do more in this business than read too far into certain lines and press conferences. But Mike Vrabel brought this up in his own press conference, asked about how the game has changed and trends. He was like, RPO stuff, some teams like to do this, blah, blah, blah. They got very specific, saying that the nickelback can be a very dynamic player. And as I've discussed here, Jonathan Jones, if he does return, I think would fill kind of a utility role within that secondary, having played the slot outside and a little bit of free safety. So if they are going to spend, like you said, or overspend, I think nickel is at the top of that list of one of those positions because, as you said, that's a starter. It's been a starter for the last decade. Okay, zooming out. Here's the big picture plan. It is going to be trenches first in free agency, followed closely by corner, receiver, and linebacker. They're going to come heavy, big offers, their best offers to their top targets, which is a mix of top of the market players, the Ronnie Stanleys of the world, Chris Godwins of the world. If they don't, they move on. But also some of those top targets are guys who are mid-level veterans that if they overspend on, won't hurt as much. Unlike past off seasons, you had heard Patriots are not going to hesitate to sign a guy if he plays the same position as someone they just drafted.
Right. Yep.
It's a new regime. They're ready to go in. And one sleeper position to watch, as we already said, will be center. Did we miss anything else about free agency?
No, the way that I would sum it up is that like they want to come out of free agency with like 5 or 6 starters so that then they can head into the draft, which we'll get into in a second, having as much flexibility as possible and taking the best available player, whether that's staying put at number 4 overall, trading down, whatever they want to do there at number 4. They really want to have that flexibility to take whatever player they view as most valuable. I think that was a big thing they did last year, was draft too much for need, and then they had to settle on guys who underperformed last year. And it does seem like the goal this year is to take the best guy, fill as many needs as free agency, spend that $130 million. Even though Elliot Wolf did say they're not going to be frivolous, wouldn't expect them to spend completely up to the cap, but they are going to spend a lot of that money.
Yeah, I mean, if you spent up to the cap, you're talking about like record-setting spending, which they've done before.
Yeah, right.
But it's also to maintain some flexibility. You want to take on bad contracts for other players at a pick and kind of a salary dump, or just players that other teams can't afford and you can't. Like, there are reasons to keep some cap space beyond March 17th or whatever it's going to be.
For sure.
Besides just trying to not spend as much as possible.